All right, go ahead and pull out your notebooks, you guys. We're going to be taking notes this period. I know you guys aren't a huge fan of lecture time, but every once in a while we do have to have a lecture period. So just go ahead, pull out your notebooks, and we'll start on these notes. So as you guys know, your essays will be started next week. We're going to be all writing essays, research papers about the civil rights movements in the 1960s. And one thing that really trips up students is that I require 4 primary sources and 6 secondary sources. So that can really confuse kids because they don't quite understand the difference between sources. So I decided we're going to have a specific lecture that's just about the different types of sources. And so that's not something that people typically think about. So we're going to talk about that today so that we can focus on sources. So the first kind of source is a primary source. Primary sources were written at the time that the event happened. So if you're writing a paper about the election of Donald Trump, you're going to use sources from 2016, 2017, from the year he was elected. You're not going to use a source from 20 years later that's like a documentary or a book. It's going to be from that year. It's going to be speeches and articles and pictures in the newspaper, stuff like that. That's a type of primary source. And so when you're writing about the civil rights movements, using speeches from Martin Luther King Jr. is a good idea. Using newspaper articles, stuff like that is a primary source. What's not a primary source is a secondary source. A secondary source is typically written much later after the time. Typically it's written by an expert, or it cannot be. And a secondary source is usually written many years after the time that the event happened. So books, documentaries, stuff like that. I just want to go ahead and remind the class that this is note-taking time. So if everyone could please look at Alex real quick and how nicely she is taking her notes and has her attention on me. That is how everyone should look right now. So if you're not taking notes and not looking like Alex, there's a problem. Moving on. So when you're looking for these sources, it's important to think about what is happening in the source and where it comes from. Is it written by someone that was witnessing an event, or was it written by someone that has a doctorate in history? If they have a doctorate in history, I can guarantee you it is a secondary source. So I want you to go ahead and pull out a separate sheet of paper, and we're going to write down 5 sources that would be considered a primary source and 5 sources that would be considered a secondary source. Now, they don't have to be a real thing. Just think of like, oh, a newspaper article, that would be a primary source. There you go, you have number 1. So what's 2, 3, 4, and 5? So just take a few minutes, write down what you would consider a primary or a secondary source, and if you have questions, I'll be walking around the room. Hey, Maddie. There's a no cell phone policy in this classroom, especially during lecture time, and I noticed you've been on your phone, you've been kind of doodling. Are you having a hard time understanding, or are you just not wanting to work, or you don't know? Okay, so I want you to go ahead. Do you remember what I asked the class to do?
Yeah.
Okay. You need to be thinking of 5 different kinds of primary sources and 5 different types of secondary sources, okay? And I don't want to see your phone out again, and if I do, I'm going to take your phone away, and I'm going to have to give you a behavior slip to fill out, okay? Okay, so go ahead and start that list. Okay, thank you. Okay.
How long was that?
I don't know.